Got Shirley next, all right.
Shirley has that right forward.
Oh, that's the one that's next on this one.
The area around Bradshaw Terrace, that has still been rezoned to medium. No. Staying.
So it's just this. Yeah, no, I need to update those.
So it just didn't appear on the map.
Pretty much anything north of Rickerton Road will be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So the next medium density area is the Shirley area.
Sorry, can I just clarify from those who remain, are you here for a particular area? Anybody in the audience? Are you here for a particular area? No, right. Okay, right.
Right. On. Just finding the notes.
So the Shirley area. Again, looking at the original area that went out for consultation, looked at the core accessibility criteria and took into account some logical boundaries. In this case, it was a SAM, Hammersley Park School, the golf course, and Shirley Intermediate, Shirley Boys School to the south, gave us our initial focus for our study area. Essentially what we've done in Shirley is reduce the extent of the potential residential medium density area down to the blocks that are most accessible to the key activity centre of the Palms. The main driver here is on the basis of supply, and there are a couple of other issues going on in this area, which the Council might be aware of, regarding the community housing redevelopment mechanism, which covers the area to the northwest around McFarlane Park, and this is where Housing New Zealand have an opportunity to redevelop some of their housing stock to medium density. So take into account that particular element and also the general level of accessibility, we thought it most appropriate to reduce it down to the blocks, which you'll see on the map there.
So it's the yellow blocks.
The yellow. Yes.
So the yellow blocks are the blocks that will remain to be rezoned for medium density residential, not the hashed blocks. That's correct, yes.
You know, the question, this is a flooding area as well. We've got concerns with the Geraldine Street. There's that Edgeby Road at the top of Geraldine, isn't it, there? And also all along Shirley Road is a flooding area too. So
the area in the bottom left corner of the map there is an existing living 3 area which transitions to residential medium density. So it's not part of this new intensification area.
Mm-hmm. And the rest of it up around there, up around Shirley Road.
There's a lot of flooding along Shirley Road and that part of.
Perhaps if you could comment on that, Scott.
I think now might be a good time to bring in our natural hazards speakers, but we've been working through this in the last couple of days, and it's a little bit unfortunate that the natural hazards workshop hasn't come before this workshop. But the general approach to these existing urban areas will be to raise floor levels. Will be to raise the floor levels within these areas, raise ground level, raise floor levels, and that'll mean that these areas will remain buildable.
That is so difficult when you're intensifying in an existing area, because you have some up, some down, some people in tree houses and some people down in the lake.
I do understand your concerns there. It's just difficult for us to know how to cut these workshops, that we can bring you all this information, but the questions that you're asking now are very relevant. But I wonder if we could keep these maps with you, and keep them for when we bring the natural hazards workshop to you, which is Tuesday.
It may be that there is remedial work planned for this area. There may be a clause that we put in to say that this doesn't apply until that's done.
Well,
Is that feasible?
again, as I say, instead of giving you any off-the-cuff comments today, I would really appreciate if we could talk about that in the whole as part of the flooding natural hazards. I accept that there is some flooding there and there are reasons for that which we can discuss on Tuesday. So that's only next week on Tuesday. At the moment, we're just showing you how we've changed the density zonings. That's what we're focusing on today, just at the moment. But certainly keep these maps in front of you and ask those same questions. I don't have the natural hazards people here.
Is there any reason, understanding what you've just said about natural hazards, but is there any reason why you have taken these areas right up to the main roads that are shown? I mean, if, for example, once we do go over the natural hazard zones, I don't want to preempt that,
Yes.
it looks as though it might be worth backing off from those roads that seem to dip and flood for whatever reasons we'll address next week. Do you consider are you able to consider taking them back from the main road, or is that done for a reason?
If there's a very good reason, flooding-wise, to not have it up to the main road, we would have to reconsider that. At this stage, the understanding is that there isn't, but John might like to respond to why currently they do go up to the main road.
Well, you've got a continuous area there of medium density, either side of Shirley Road, for example. So going up to the main road gives you that sort of that road frontage of new development. It gives you a consistent streetscape as you move along the road. Overall, in Shirley, the main driver is really a supply issue there. It's a relatively compact centre. You have some reasonable access into the surrounding residential area. To zone all of that area's potential medium density would exceed the supply you really need for that area. So we took a logical view to reduce it to really the most accessible blocks to the centre. Also taking into account that the community housing redevelopment mechanism is to the northwest of that site, so it also seemed logical to have something of a gap between that area and the medium density around the centre.
I kind of, I think the urban development strategy had a percentage of greenfield development versus intensification. So what this seems to be doing is we've already taken one big area out, but we're now getting less and less intensification, more and more greenfield development, which is quite unsustainable long term. So I am a bit concerned how the extent of which you've taken this out, but in the submissions that we got from people said concern opposition regarding stormwater issues and sewer, and it just is to be further commented on. So when are we going to get the comment? Is that going to be part of the natural hazards chapter? And can we see a really clear assessment around the stormwater issues in this local area and the infrastructure capacity issues?
That will come to you through the natural hazards chapter, you're quite correct. But going back to the overall picture regarding the balance between greenfield development versus intensification in already existing urban areas, we do have a slide on that. We can either bring it up now or we can continue through the maps first and then go to the chart. But we are still meeting the household requirements for both, definitely over meeting the greenfield numbers, but we will be meeting the intensification numbers as well. And we can either bring that up now or at the end of these maps.
I think it would be really useful to get like a chart that showed urban development strategy, public consultation, what the feedback was in terms of the split, what was agreed, and then what's happened before the earthquake, what's happened post-earthquake, okay. and where we're trying to go as the district plan, so that we can be really clear, because it does seem a little bit higgledy-piggledy.
We haven't come with exactly those details
I mean-
because we've come with the main issues that have been raised from the feedback. The split between greenfield and intensity hasn't been raised as an issue in the feedback. It already is set for us in a sense through the RPS and through the LERP. So this is what we have to you, and this is to show you that we are still meeting the residential medium density requirements under the LERP and the RPS. And I'd invite, are you speaking to this, Scott, or John?
Oh, I can speak to it.
Well, I mean, I think getting that information back, we could go into a lot of detail now, but I just want in a very general sense to understand where we're heading, because I guess one of the fears is that we've rezoned in a huge amount of land and we're not getting the capacity to the land that we've currently zoned. We're zoning a whole bunch more, and we're having it in some areas we're seeing a huge uptake, in other areas we're not seeing any uptake.
You might recall, Councillor, I think it was last month we had the land availability quarterly report to the committee, and that gave a clear indication as to what is happening between greenfield areas versus intensification. Now, while a lot of that land, not all of it yet, and some of the greenfield areas will come through a chapter in phase 2, but while a lot of that land now has its planning in place, we can't force the developers to bring it online necessarily, and that was a discussion that we've had previously.
Yeah. And we've asked them to report to come back, but
So we do that report quarterly.
How does a public submission on this one saying concerned about the infrastructure not get picked up, but in Riccarton it does? What am I missing there?
Well, I think we tried to explain to you that the first indications were drafts where we were asked to look at which areas could be increased in their intensity. And as you recall, those maps had sort of fuzzy edges. They were generalised quite maps. And what we've done now is done the more intensive work around looking at the various criteria and assessing each of these areas against that, taking into consideration public feedback as well, but also stormwater issues.
But that's the point. In the report that we've got, we don't have any comment on the stormwater issues or the sewage issues that people have raised. What we've just heard in terms of Riccarton is there's not capacity there to deal with it.
Oh.
What I'm trying to understand is
Councillor,
what assessment have we done versus this area, given that public comments have been raising these concerns, and are we satisfied that...
Councillor, we have substantial modelling for the area of around Riccarton and the areas around Church Corner that quite clearly show to us that there are existing problems within those areas. In terms of Shirley, it's a case of we've had no known problems from our other experts reported back to us, but that doesn't mean we don't need to go back to our experts to double check those figures. The table, as you'll be aware, we're left with seven recommended residential medium density areas. The table looks at predicts the potential number of residential units that could come out of those areas up to 2028 at various residential densities. The regional policy statement requires the council to deliver intensification at least 30 households a hectare. We estimate the most it could be delivered at is at 60 households a hectare, but it's more likely that it would be somewhere between 30 and we think 40 households a hectare. So within each of these, so the total number of residential units that could be produced at 30 is 1,854, and again, these are our best estimates. And at 40, 3,337, but we think that the reality will be somewhere between those. And just drawing on some LERP figures. The LERP projects a need for, and I've rounded these out, 21,000 households in intensification areas within the greater Christchurch area. The vast majority of those are to be within Christchurch. We've estimated that to be about 80% of that figure, and then which leaves us something somewhere around 17,000 for intensification within Greater Christchurch. Then there we estimate some 7,000 of those, if all goes to plan with the central within the central plans for the central city, will locate within those, leaving us somewhere from 10 to 11,000 of these being within Christchurch suburbs.
It appears to me that Shirley Papanui is a ward, plus some of the houses in Bishopdale, which again is quite high in the net yield. Our ward looks to be by far the biggest when it comes to what's actually going to happen as far as the intensification effects are. Am I reading that correctly?
On the left are the name, sorry, they're meant to represent the centres, because all of these medium density areas are around existing centres.
Right, so around the existing centres that I'm seeing on the left,
Yes.
that would suggest that the Shirley Papanui ward has by far the largest number of homes as far as the increase in the density goes.
The largest
Linwood
would be
and
Linwood,
Bishopdale.
Linwood and Bishopdale at 478 and 350.
Sorry, I'm looking at the net yield.
Perhaps if I could explain, the net yield is an outcome of existing conditions and the size of the area that may potentially be residential medium density.
Okay, so look, I don't want to split hairs, and help me here. I don't want to rephrase it and repeat what I've just said. Looking at the figures we've got up there, Shirley Papanui will have the highest number of homes for the density.
No, it won't.
Right,
It
so
won't,
can
Ellie.
No, can you
Actually,
correct me and just tell me
Hagley
how?
Ferrymead will, because if you look around Linwood and you add the 700 from the central city, by ward it will beat you.
We've got Shirley Papanui, Bishopdale, and some in the Maribyrnong area.
Sorry, I forgot you had Bishopdale.
Yeah, so there are 4 areas there that feed into the Shirley Papanui, and I know it's not a competition, but what my concern is that we've got huge problems as far as the flooding goes and the infrastructure goes. We have huge problems as far as roading goes. We've got 4-laning going into the area as well. We've got major issues at the Hills-Warrington intersection, which is going to hold up traffic there. How much are those issues I just mentioned factored in when you look at the implementation of these?
I see what you mean when you add together the various centres within a ward, yes. And you're right, no, it's not a competition. These areas are based on a number of criteria that John has discussed about. You want medium density areas to be within walking distance of...
Waste your time and ours, and
No,
I don't
no,
mean
no.
to rudely interrupt you, but I do understand all that. All I'm wanting to know is those issues I just mentioned, which are huge in our area, a number of them.
Yes.
Are they taken into consideration?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes, they are. The flooding issues will come to you on Tuesday. The roading issues, I mean, they are being repaired as we speak. None of these houses are going to appear overnight. And in fact, in the existing plan, we have a huge amount of living 2 and 3 that was never taken up. These figures don't mean that it will happen.
No, but it's
simply
potential.
It's enabling.
Right.
It's enabling that to occur. That's correct.
I think it's important to note too that these figures, they deal with development, the capacity that's required to 2028. What's zoned in the district plan for residential medium density goes to 2041. The Greater Christchurch Urban Development Strategy and the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement both plan for growth to 2041. And that's what we're zoning, because this district plan goes beyond what, 2028, that's what it provides for. And so if you've got to consider the numbers as they are occurring, redevelopment will occur to 2041. So you will not get the pressure on the infrastructure immediately. And we also took into consideration and have known for a long time that infrastructure gets upgraded. There's a huge infrastructure upgrade program, so that has been given consideration. So there's no major concerns from any of the infrastructure staff regarding this use of development.
I understand what you're saying, but there are houses in this area at the moment that can't even flush their toilets. So, you know, I know that there are ongoing upgrades and that's part of the program, and business as usual, and in a normal circumstance, magic, I understand that, but we are in a really exceptional situation now.
Yeah,
And the market will need that. The market it will only develop it without a doubt. This is why there's always been the approach to not provide medium density in one location, or two or three.
Yeah.
The more you spread it across the city, the greater chance you have that the market is going to pick up. Undoubtedly, the market's going to pick up to the west quicker in areas that aren't, you know,
impacted, yeah.
at the moment.
Okay.
And I would say too, Councillor, that of course the specific issues to do with the specific area would be picked up at the time of the resource consent or the building consent, and that would be considered as well. But it's highly unlikely that any builder or developer would want to put up houses where it's not supported by suitable infrastructure yet, and that won't happen. Well, they in fact won't get the consent for it if the structure is not there to support it.
Thank you. Thank you. Have we got proposed greater density in lower socio-economic areas, or is that my wild imagination?
No.
So when I look at those figures.
As indicated to you, they're all around centres. That left-hand column is not wards, it's centre-based for the criteria that were used to develop these areas in the first place.
Okay, but even looking at that in terms of centre-based, it still appears to me anyway, if you look at those areas such as Linwood, that part of Bishopdale, etc., it looks as if in the lower socio-economic areas there's proposed greater density, and obviously we're having pushback from arguably higher socio-economic areas. That's fine, that's what this is about. People have their say, but I just... Am I being too cynical, or is...
Cynical.
Because what's not included on the list is all of the greenfields development. Yeah. So the area, for example, around Horswell, and I don't know which socio-economic group you'd put that in, probably fairly high. But the new key activity centre also in the Meadowlands area, if you were putting that on here, it would be massive intensification of what is currently a rural field. What you're seeing here is a partial picture. Some of which is impacted by the infrastructure capacity down Riccarton Road.
Maryvale's up there as a centre too.
Yeah.
Perhaps if I may just take it up to the initial starting point for looking at centres, was that they are either key activity centres or large neighbourhood centres, and the Land Use Recovery Plan and the Regional Policy Statement both say to look at the potential for intensification around key activity centres and large neighbourhood centres. So that was our starting point, and that's why we've looked at all the centres that meet those initial criteria.
Just slightly different too, I do share the Shirley concerns. It's not only the Flockton area, but Stapleton's Road, that area too, further down that catchment. I think we've really got to be, obviously quite careful and...
Perhaps also, if I could just further clarify the table, the figures there are net yield figures. So a net yield is what the potential development capacity is, less what is already there. So in areas where you currently have quite low density development, particularly Living One areas, the net yield will be higher than areas where you may already have a higher density of development in the existing urban environment. For example, Maryvale compared to Bishopdale. Maryvale is presently at a higher density overall than Bishopdale, hence the yield figure for Maryvale appears to be less than Bishopdale. But it's a product of both the area and the existing density within those areas.
It's where we're doing the density and how we're doing it.
That's right, and that's why we will bring you to the urban design criteria in due course through this presentation.
And just one last point on this slide. You'll note that we estimated 10 to 11,000 would be needed for intensification. You'll see that, of course, the figures in the estimates table are somewhat less than this. So the balance would be spread across the existing intensification land available within the existing Living 1, 2 and 3 zones. Obviously the new residential medium density zone, and the LURP intensification mechanisms as well, those that were introduced last December. So we have a confidence that what we've supplied to 2028 to date should be sufficient, if not perhaps a little more than what's needed initially, or to 2028.
So shall we move? Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, but regarding the figure in here for the Rickton area, whether this figure already consider and reflect previous, the staff mentioned the Broader Shore Terrace and the Arrow Street and Dover Street. Your original intention tried to have a change, they're the medium density residential area, but after that you mean remain the same. So the figure already reflect or not yet?
Have these figures been based on the original maps or the new maps?
The new maps.
The new maps. Oh, Rachel.
Those are the areas that we
So,
pointed out on there.
yes, so the Bradshaw Terrace area is presently included in that figure. So that will have to be subtracted from that figure. So the outcome of which for Riccarton, the figure will be substantially less. But with Riccarton, you need to take into account that there's already a very big area of L3 in Riccarton. Yeah. Sorry, what street was that, sorry? Yep. Darvel Street is to the east of the railway line, and that area is already zoned as Living 3, which enables medium density already. So effectively, there's no change there.
Just help me understand the most fundamental question. Our existing city plan has extra capacity for how many yield? What yield? So if we made no changes and we just use the existing zoning, what's the current yield that would provide in 2028?
We do. In the section 32, appendix, sorry, just bear with me, I find it.